Frank McPike was a wonderful guy. He was a good guy. He was an honest, straight-ahead, straight shooter.
Remember when a primetime drama had no case of the week, no tidy arrest by the end of the hour, no clean line between the agent and the criminals he was supposed to be studying, and then turned all of that missing structure into 4 seasons of television? That was Wiseguy. Stephen J. Cannell and Frank Lupo created it for CBS, and on the surface, it looks like every other undercover cop show from the era. An agent burrows into organized crime, gets close enough to the bad guys that the line starts blurring, and has to live there for months instead of closing the case in 45 minutes. Ken Wahl played Vinny Terranova, the agent slowly getting seduced by every criminal he's supposed to take down. Jonathan Banks played his handler Frank McPike, 1 step behind and twice as tired. And Jim Byrnes played lifeguard, the wheelchair-using information man running the whole operation from the shadows. Then you have the guest list. Kevin Spacey, before he was canceled, Jerry Lewis, Ray Sharkey, Tim Curry, Debbie Harry, and one guy whose second career you will not see coming, cycling through as villains, victims, and one genuinely unhinged cult leader. So today, we're counting down 15 weird facts about Wiseguy. And stick around for number 1. Because one casting decision came with a coincidence so absurd it sounds completely made up. Now, before we start, hit that like button and subscribe. Every good undercover operation needs backup, so consider this yours. Alright, you're going under, so let's go with number 15, a rumor with a broken calendar. Every retrospective on this show repeats the same claim. Wiseguy was based on Donnie Brasco, Joseph Pistone's memoir about 6 years undercover inside the Bonino crime family. Great story, but terrible math. Wiseguy premiered in September of 1987. Pistone's book didn't hit shelves until 1988, by which point Vinny Terranova had been on television for months. You can't steal from a book nobody's published yet. The Pistone case itself, though, had been picked over in mob trial coverage for years, and the idea of an agent living a double life inside the mafia was just sitting there in the culture for anyone who wanted it. Cannell and Frank Lupo grabbed it the same way everybody else did. And yet, people still repeat based on Donnie Brasco like it's printed on the box. It isn't. It's a rumor that got lucky enough to sound official. Number 14, copyright locked away an entire storyline. For 33 years, 7 episodes of Wiseguy were basically impossible to own. Not lost, not destroyed, just too expensive to touch. The arc is called Dead Dog Records. Vinny goes undercover running a failing label, sharing scenes with Tim Curry as a scheming record mogul, Debbie Harry as a fallen pop idol, and Eagles co-founder Glenn Frey as an agent who talks faster than he delivers. It's a great cast, but it's a nightmare for a home video release because a story set in the music business needs real music business songs, and real songs mean real lawyers. Wiseguy started trickling onto DVD in 2003, then came fuller sets in 2009 and 2010. Every single release skipped all 7 Dead Dog episodes. The ones that made the cut didn't escape clean either. The Moody Blues Nights in White Satin plays on a jukebox while Sonny Steelgrave figures out Vinny's been lying to him for a year, and Sonny asks if he remembers the 60s. On DVD, that song is gone, swapped for cheap instrumental filler. Sonny's still talking about the 60s, just nothing's answering him. The Dead Dog arc stayed unbuyable in any form until 2022, when a boutique outfit called Visual Entertainment finally put out the complete 75 episode set. A storyline about the record business got held hostage by the actual record business for over 3 decades. It took a company you'd have to Google to buy it back. Number 13, one villain inspired 2 different worlds. Mel Prophet only existed for about a dozen episodes. He outlived the show by decades in 2 places nobody would think to look. In 1990, Marvel handed John Byrne a relaunch of Namor the Submariner, and Byrne filled it with corporate villains instead of sea monsters. Front and center, Desmond and Phoebe Mars, twins running a global business empire devoted to each other in a way that made readers deeply uneasy. When Desmond dies, Phoebe keeps talking to him. Byrne admitted where they came from in a letters page that same year, Mel and Susan Prophet. the manic arms dealers and his sister from Wiseguy's first season, redrawn in spandex-adjacent business suits. Then Cannell went back to the well himself. In 1996, his company produced a Fox series called Profit, built around a corporate sociopath named Jim Profit, who slept in a cardboard box and destroyed people for sport. Fox pulled it after 4 episodes. Cannell confirmed the name was no accident and the character owed a debt to Mel. One arc on a show CBS barely promoted, and it quietly spawned a Marvel villain and a Fox anti-hero. Kevin Spacey's first real showcase turned out to have a longer shelf life than the series that gave it to him. Number 12, the pretty boy hunk who wrote the best episode. Ken Wahl never auditioned for Wiseguy. Cannell had seen The Wanderers and watched him hold his own opposite Paul Newman in Fort Apache, the Bronx, and that was enough. He handed him Vinny Terranova off the page. The press ran with the obvious angle. Cheekbones, leather jacket, sexiest man on television coverage, bodyguards at public appearances to keep the crowds off him, standard heartthrob treatment for a guy who could not have looked more the part. What almost nobody mentioned, the show's single best reviewed script was his idea. Season 2's White Noise. A disgraced ex-boss doctors Vinny's file, gets him committed to a psychiatric hospital against his will, and Vinny spends the episode sedated and hallucinating Sonny Steelgrave, who wants to know why his friend let him die. Wahl has the story credit. The actor pitched the hour where his own character finally has to answer for the guy he betrayed. That episode won the 1990 Edgar Award from the Mystery Writers of America. Wiseguy had been nominated twice before and lost both times. This was the only one it ever took home, and the trophy went to the 2 staff writers who turned Wahl's story into a teleplay. He also produced that episode, uncredited, of course. The heartthrob was running the show's best hour and not even putting his name on it. Number 11, 6 Emmy nominations for one familiar role. Jonathan Banks has 6 Emmy nominations for supporting actor in a drama. He has lost every single one. The first came in 1989 for Frank Pike, Vinny's boss, the guy running a deep cover operation while his own marriage falls apart and his best agent slowly stops being able to tell which life is the fake one. Banks played him permanently exhausted and completely unbothered. He lost to Larry Drake from LA Law. Then 24 years go by. Banks turns up on Breaking Bad as Mike Ehrmantraut and gets nomination number 2. He takes Mike into Better Call Saul and picks up 4 more. Look at the 2 roles side by side and it gets kind of funny. Mick Pike is a federal agent who stayed honest. Mike is a Philadelphia cop who didn't. Otherwise, it's the same man doing the same job in the same voice, cleaning up after a reckless younger guy who keeps mistaking recklessness for a plan and being visibly tired about it. Nobody at Breaking Bad has ever claimed they were building on Mick Pike. They didn't have to. Banks brought him along. That makes him the only person ever nominated in that category for 3 separate shows. It also puts him in a tie with Ed Begley Jr. for the most nominations in the category without ever winning one. 30 years of the Academy noticing the guy and never once handing him anything. Frank McPike would find that just about right. Number 10, the executive who bought it, then came to work for him. Cannell got Wiseguy rejected everywhere. Not for the writing though, it was for the structure. He wanted to spend 8 or 10 episodes on a single villain before moving on to the next one, and every network he walked into treated the self-contained hour like a law of physics. Then Kim LeMasters landed in the programming chair at CBS. Cannell had worked with him before, so he went over and pitched it one more time. The way Cannell told it, LeMasters called it the best idea he'd ever heard for a show and bought it on the spot. Wiseguy premiered that September. 2 months later, LeMasters was running all of CBS Entertainment. Now, credit where it's owed. Michael Mann's Crime Story had beaten Wiseguy to air by a year doing something similar, and NBC killed it after 2 seasons. But Wiseguy is the one that stuck. 10 episodes to seduce an audience into caring about a mob boss, then kill him and start over with somebody worse. It made the long arc look like a format instead of a gamble. Here's the part nobody tells you. LeMasters left CBS in 1989. 3 years later, he took a job as president of Stephen J. Cannell Productions. The executive who said yes ended up working for the guy who asked. Number 9. The stage actor television had never heard of. Killing off Sonny Steelgrave 9 episodes in left the producers with a problem they'd built on purpose. Follow that. So they went bigger and considerably stranger. Mel Prophet, billionaire arms dealer, manic depressive, hooked on whatever his sister was putting in the syringe. A devout believer that the planet had far too many people on it, and privately convinced his soul was being stored inside a crystal. When he finally comes apart, his sister overdoses him out of mercy and sends him off on a burning boat. For that, they hired Kevin Spacey. Broadway knew him fine. He debuted opposite Liv Ullmann, cycled through the male roles in Hurly Burly, and just came off a celebrated run as Jack Lemmon's son in Long Day's Journey into Night. Television had no idea. His screen resume was a subway thief in Heartburn who's visible for maybe 9 seconds, plus a couple of guest spots. Across 11 or so episodes, he and Joan Severance played a brother and sister whose relationship the show made no attempt to keep subtext, and Spacey ate the entire series alive doing it. Vinny's supposed to be running the operation. He spends most of the arc trying to keep up. Emmy voters passed. 20 years later, Entertainment Weekly ranked the snub number 44 on a list of the worst in television history. By then, he had 2 Oscars, and he didn't need the apology. Number 8, CBS rebuilt the show in 1 season. Season 4 opens with Frank McPike letting himself into Vinny's apartment. The television's on, there's pasta on the stove, the shower's running, but nobody's home, and there's a white handprint on the door. That's how Wiseguy wrote out Ken Wahl. No goodbye, no final mission, no body. Somebody walked into Vinny Terranova's apartment and took him, and he never came back. McPike eventually gives the eulogy, which is where he finally tells a room full of civilians what Vinny actually did for a living. 4 seasons of maintaining the cover, blown at the man's own funeral. Then, they rebuilt the show from the studs. Stephen Bauer took over as Michael Santana, a U.S. attorney disbarred for cutting corners on a drug case. Production packed up and moved to Miami. Mob Money became Cartel Money. They even dubbed Latin percussion and piano over the Mike Post theme, so the show didn't sound like itself either. Bauer's entire claim to fame was standing loyally beside a drug kingpin in Scarface. Now, he was chasing them. Maximilian Schell came aboard as Amado Guzman, a courtly banker washing millions for the Medellin cartel through a pension fund. That's a Best Actor Oscar winner playing the villain of the week on a struggling CBS crime show. None of it landed, however. CBS dropped season 4 onto Saturday nights in November of 1990, the ratings fell through the floor, and production was suspended after 11 episodes. 8 of them aired. 2 weeks after the last one, CBS canceled the show and yanked it off the schedule the same day. The final 3 never aired at all. Nobody saw them until they surfaced on home video, long after everyone had stopped waiting. Okay, so we're going to take a quick pause, because if you knew the phrase story arc before you knew the word Wiseguy, you're not alone. Half of television owes this show a thank you card it never sent. Drop a comment. Which future star were you most surprised to find hiding in Wiseguy? And if you're enjoying the ride, hit that like and subscribe button. We've still got bigger twists waiting in the wings. Alright, back under we go with number 7, 5 people, 5 different exit stories. The fight went public because of a fan club. Dorothy Swanson ran Viewers for Quality Television, an advocacy group that had handed Wiseguy 5 awards and spent years telling people to watch it. In the spring of 1990, she published a conversation she'd had with Ken Wahl. Within hours, Cannell was on the phone telling her Wahl's version wasn't true, with documents to back it up. Swanson went to the press to say she might have been taken for a ride. Then, the Los Angeles Times started making calls, and it got worse. CBS said the show was being retooled and Wahl would appear in a few episodes to hand the series to Stephen Bauer. Wahl told the Times that was flatly wrong. He'd been dropped against his will and had no plans to shoot those episodes. His own agent had told the same reporter moments earlier that the 2 sides were working things out creatively. Wahl laughed out loud when he heard it. Cannell's version was that he was surprised, and he still wanted Wahl on the show. He also had letters from Wahl and Wahl's attorney asking to be released. Wahl's answer to the letters? He only sent them to get the lawyers off his back. He never meant to leave. CBS said no comment, then added that it wouldn't be commenting in the future either. 3 seasons playing a man who lies for a living, and he couldn't even get his own exit story straight with his own lawyers. Number 6. Production accident became the plot. Season 2. Middle of the garment trade story. The director wants Ken Wahl to walk into his own point of view shot, which means stepping toward a camera that's rolling straight at him. He steps up, The dolly wheel catches his right heel and rips the Achilles tendon out. Then she asks for another take. Wahl said, "Okay, you're the boss." By Cannell's account, the camera ran over him a second time, and that one hurt badly enough that Cannell benched him for 3 episodes. Production never stopped. The writers just handed the injury to Vinny. In Next of Kin, Vinny gets clipped by a taxi and spends the rest of the story on the sidelines, which meant the lead of a network drama was written out of his own show for medical reasons that were completely real. Filling in, Anthony Dennison, fresh off the canceled Crime Story, as John Henry Raglan, a philandering agent who'd been on leave for blowing 2 other agents' covers during an interrogation. Around him, Jerry Lewis playing it stone cold straight as a garment manufacturer the mob is bleeding dry, with Ron Silver as his son and Stanley Tucci as the man holding the knife. And it cost Wahl the job. He said later that everything that went wrong between him and the producers started right there. That when he got hurt, they decided he was making it up to get out of the show. They didn't believe the doctors. They didn't believe him. They put his injury in the script and still didn't buy that he had one. Number 5, Wiseguy refused to die. 3 times now somebody has tried to drag this show back. One of them actually made it to air. In 1996, ABC ordered a reunion movie. Wahl, Banks, and Byrnes all came back, and the script quietly deleted the entire Stephen Bauer season on the grounds that nobody watched it anyway and nobody was going to complain. The new explanation for where Vinny went: the borough pulled him out of deep cover and stuck him on a wiretapping detail. 6 years off the air, and they bring back television's greatest undercover agent to sit in a van wearing headphones. Now, it's a good movie. Ted Levine plays the target 5 years after Silence of the Lambs, so the voice alone does half the work, and reviews were strong. ABC then scheduled it directly opposite NBC's Thursday night at the absolute peak of must-see TV, so nobody watched. It has never been released on home video in the United States, and it remains the last time the original cast played these people. 15 years later, NBC bought a reboot from the Homeland writer Alex Carey. New premise: disgraced cop trading undercover work for time off his prison sentence. No Vinny anywhere in it. NBC signed a script commitment with a penalty attached, meaning they owed money whether or not it ever got made. They paid, it never got made. Then in 2025, word got out that a Wiseguy feature film was in development, with Banks reportedly returning as McPike opposite a new lead they're describing as a blue-collar James Bond. One of the producers is Tawnia McKiernan, Stephen Cannell's daughter. Cannell died in 2010. His kid is still out there pitching this show, though. Number 4, cast 4 days out of rehab. January of 1981, Ray Sharkey wins a Golden Globe for The Idolmaker. Best actor, 28 years old, and the town is his. Then came a $400 a day habit. The lead roles turned into supporting roles, and the supporting roles turned into, well, nothing. 4 separate drug-related car wrecks, 2 of them requiring surgery on his eyes. In 1987, he checked into a rehab center in Orange County and stayed 2 months. 4 days after he came out, he had the part of Sonny Steelgrave. That performance is why the first season worked. Sonny is warm, funny, generous, and completely devoted to a man who's been running a con on him since the day they met. Then the show kills him 9 episodes in. Everybody fought Cannell on it. Wahl called him over and over, saying he was wrecking the show and that losing Sharkey would end them. The network pushed back. His own producers pushed back. Sharkey worked the phones himself trying to stay. Cannell did it anyway, because a story that ends is the entire premise of the series. Emmy voters never nominated him. When Entertainment Weekly eventually built a list of the 50 worst snubs in Emmy history, Sonny Steelgrave landed at number 26, higher than anything else this show ever put on screen. Sharkey never got clear of it. He died of AIDS-related complications in June of 1993 at 40 years old, about 2.5 years after Wiseguy went off the air. 6 years between the best work he ever did and the end of him. Number 3, the cover story he kept for 12 years. Ken Wahl had wrecked himself on a motorcycle before. 1984, no helmet, riding to meet Diane Keaton about a part in Mrs. Sophel. 89 stitches in his scalp, and the role went to Mel Gibson. So years later, when he turned up with a scar on his neck and said motorcycle accident, it fit the pattern. That's why he picked it. What actually happened was August of 1992. He He'd stayed the night at the home of a woman he was casually seeing, went down a flight of slippery marble stairs, and broke his neck. The woman was Joan Child, who was involved with Rodney Dangerfield and eventually married him. She asked Wahl to keep her name out of the papers, and he did. Not that anybody bought it anyway. The motorcycle story got picked apart fairly quickly. He kept telling it anyway to interviewer after interviewer, long past the point where it was fooling a single person. He didn't give the real version until 2004. The injury took everything. 2.5 years learning to walk again. 2 surgeries he calls botched. Constant pain. Doctors who wouldn't prescribe for it. And by his own account, he started drinking to handle what they wouldn't treat. He shot the 1996 reunion movie in 16 days, said he barely made it through, and that was the moment he knew he was done. He never took another role. And 4 years before that fall, by his telling, producers on this very show had decided he was inventing an injury to get out of his contract. He wasn't. Then he spent 12 years inventing the cause of a real one on somebody else's behalf. Number 2. One casting director built an all-star bench. Nobody remembers casting directors. Remember this one though. Vicki Huff ran casting on Wiseguy. The Casting Society of America nominated her for it in 1988, then handed her the award outright in 1989. Best Casting of a Dramatic Episodic Series. An industry trophy for a show CBS could barely keep on the schedule. Set aside the names we've already covered and look at who else walked through that door. Chaz Palminteri turned up in season 3, 4 years before A Bronx Tale made him. David Strathairn played a small-town sheriff, quietly coming apart long before the Oscar nomination. Michael Chiklis had a guest spot more than a decade ahead of The Shield. Paul Guilfoyle played a hate group enforcer before 15 seasons on CSI. Ken Jenkins ran the OCB before he ran the hospital on Scrubs. And Paul McCrane played a record producer with a temper before he became the guy everybody wanted dead on ER. One good season is luck. That's an eye. Then there's the one nobody sees coming. A season 2 arc cast Fred Dalton Thompson as Knox Pooley, the soft-spoken frontman for a hate group called the Pilgrims of Promise. His lieutenant is the one who attacks a synagogue. Pooley walks away clean by insisting he was never a true believer, just a con man working a crowd, and the arc leaves him selling beachfront property in Florida. 6 years later, Fred Thompson was a United States Senator. Years after that, he even made a run for president. Vicki Huff got a trophy. She should have gotten a scouting contract. Number 1, cast on the exact anniversary of losing his legs. February of 1972. Jim Byrnes is 23, living in a village on Vancouver Island, out on a closing time beer run with 2 friends. Rain coming sideways, they pull over north of Parksville to push a stalled pickup off the road. Back at the party, another friend decides the beer run is taking too long and drives out to look for them. He comes up from behind in the storm. Byrnes lost both legs that night, February 26, 1972. He'd actually trained as an actor before all this. Theater at Boston University, a part in Richard III opposite the guy who'd go on to star in Starsky and Hutch. After the accident, he built a life in music instead, playing blues bars up and down British Columbia. In 1986, he played 300 shows and still couldn't get a mortgage. That August, a friend's agent agreed to sign him. 6 months crawled by with almost nothing in the way of auditions. Then a message turned up on his answering machine. Some American producers were looking for a legless guy in a wheelchair. Byrnes figured he could probably handle that one. He auditioned the next day. They cast him on February 26, 1987, 15 years to the day that he lost his legs. He played lifeguard across all 4 seasons, real wheelchair and real prosthetics. Nothing a props department had to fake, and came back one last time for the 1996 movie. The Wiseguy money bought him a house in Vancouver he still lives in. The credit got him Highlander, where he spent 5 more seasons as Joe Dawson. The worst night of his career and the first day of his second career land on the exact same square of the calendar, just 15 years apart. Nobody in that casting office had the faintest idea. And there you have it, 15 weird facts about Wiseguy. Which one hit hardest for you? Let us know in the comment section below. And hey, subscribe and send this to the one friend who loves television history. Odds are, even they don't know half of what Wiseguy pulled off. Until next time, keep your cover story straighter than Ken Wahl kept his, because this is Remember When.